Alright, so still right now I'm working on testing the video. So I spent the last couple of weeks testing out the photo capabilities of the Fujifilm X-T20. I wanted to give the video side of it a shot, really just to get a feel for how it works, what it looks like, and honestly how editable the video is once I get it right, how the color grading and all that works. So first, I actually want to take you back to my kind of sort of makeshift office to talk about the photo side of it real quick. Okay, so here I am in my makeshift little office, and the reason I call it makeshift is because I'm actually getting rid of a lot of my furniture and stuff, getting ready to try to sell my house to move into an apartment, trying to downsize a little bit. So I'm sorry if it's a little bit echoey in here, but the room's kind of empty, so there's that. If you've been following my social media lately, you know that I bought a Fujifilm X-T20, and see if I can get it to focus here, there you go, a Fujifilm X-T20, and I've kind of been, for the last couple of weeks, have been pushing it to try to find its limits and to try to find what it's good at and its capabilities and all that kind of stuff. Wanted to talk for a minute about why I bought it. I like to travel, and I wanted something that is small and backpackable, but still packed enough of a punch to be able to actually take good photos, good enough photos for, you know, like travel type photos, right? And so I kind of wanted to give it a shot, and also I wanted to give mirrorless a shot. Mostly, I think the biggest benefit I was looking for with mirrorless is the silent shooting mode. Couple of reasons. As an example, a few months ago, I was shooting a martial arts tournament for a client, and there was a portion at the beginning where everybody lined up. They were in like a formation by rank, and everything went silent for like a meditation period. And the only noise in the gymnasium was the clatter of my mirror. I took 2 photos and I stopped because I didn't want to be the one to disturb that, right? Silent shooting mode would have been very beneficial at that point. But my mirror was just echoing through the gymnasium. I didn't get the shots that I wanted of that portion of it because of that. Another thing is I've actually had wildlife spooked by my mirror sounds before, right? So I was very intrigued by silent shooting mode. Found a couple other benefits for that. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then I wanted to give Fuji a try. So yes, I know Canon has made their M line, so the M50, the M5, the M100, right? I wanted to step into a Fujifilm for a couple of reasons. One, because I kind of become frustrated with Canon as the company a little bit. I'm not going to go into that right now. If you want to know why, say something down in the comments and I'll maybe expound upon that a little bit. But I like where Fuji's going as a company. I really liked their medium format sensor cameras, the GFX line. Would like to give those a shot in the future, but I wanted to get my feet wet with Fuji first. And I really like the look. I'm a big fan. I kind of, again, if you follow my social media, you'll know that I recently bought another camera. I'm kind of obsessed with vintage cameras. Actually, picked this guy up the other day, an Argus C3, manufactured 1947, but not doing that video right now. I kind of have an obsession with vintage cameras, and I like the fact that they're going back to kind of a vintage look, and just the fact that this is tiny. If you notice by the thumbnail image, the size of this compared to the 6D Mark II, this is a tiny little camera, and that actually kind of led me into some difficulties at the beginning because of how small it is. It was uncomfortable at first because I was the first day I was messing with it. I was actually shooting a event for a client that was at a petting zoo, and so between the times that I was doing photos for the event, I would actually grab this thing and just walk around and take pictures of the animals. And the hard part at the beginning was being used to a larger camera, because I kind of have small hands, but I'm used to a larger camera. So this thing, I almost felt uncomfortable, like I couldn't reach the controls because of how small it was. And then once I actually got used to it though, I started having a blast. So the small size there, difficult to get through at the beginning. Once I got used to it, it was fine. So it is, that is one of the benefits of this thing is like I said, it's a travelable size. The other thing is it's kind of inconspicuous, right? Especially for like if you're a street photographer, right? Big camera, people tend to just assume you're a professional, right? And you are, but people make that assumption and they will take note. They'll look at you and give you the smile for the camera. They'll look away. I've even had people come and gripe at me before for taking pictures, right? With a small camera, nobody assumes that, right? Big camera, they assume you're professional. Small camera, they assume you're a tourist that's trying to figure it out, especially if they can't hear it. And that's the other benefit I was talking about with the silent shooting mode, is one thing that usually clues them into somebody being there is that familiar sound of the mirror clatter. With silent shooting mode, they don't get that. You're just standing there with your tiny little camera. You're a tourist. Nobody pays attention to you. So you end up with more natural photos in street photography, in theory. I'm not gonna guarantee that, but you know, in theory, you're gonna end up with more natural photos. But I will say, for what this is, right? This is a crop sensor camera with a kit lens, and for what it is, it does take great photos. I kind of wanted to point to a couple of them over here. So this one right here, I took this photo. This is the Main Street Bridge over the St. Johns River here in Jacksonville, Florida. And I can zoom in here. When I zoom in here, it's almost clear enough that I can read the street signs underneath the bridge. Now, along with that, I do want to point out the nature of the blur, the lens flare around here. It's kind of weird, and we'll talk about that in a little bit on a different photo. But in general, I like the way this handles these high contrast edges, the reflections here with the dark sky, right? I was actually very impressed with what this camera could do as a crop sensor camera with the kit lens. This is one of the photos I took at the zoo that day. This is a cute little goat that was trying to get his head through the little gate here to smell the camera. But this photo here, all right, this is one of the photos that I took at the petting zoo. And if you notice, like here in the blur areas, it kind of has that weird texture that I was talking about around the lights. And over here, if we play with the sharpening slider, we can actually kind of get a better view of it. But if you see it actually, it's almost like a worming, right? Where it has just this weird texture in the blurred areas. Now, come back. When you zoom out and you're not looking super up close, you can't see it, right? So, like I say, I was actually very impressed for what this camera could do. You can't really see the weird textures and stuff at a normal level. That's when you start blowing it up and looking at the close detail of it. So yeah, when you're looking at the normal photo from a distance, you can't really see the worming and the weird detail in it. But another thing I noticed is this here, the day after I was at the petting zoo, I took the camera it was a meetup for a pinup group. And we wound up doing an impromptu photo shoot on the beach. This is Kirsten, really sweet girl, but I don't think that this is her actual halo. So if you look at the high contrast edges here and here, and I didn't really see it around like her darker hair here, but there's a slight bit of aberration there. But it's weird because it's a white aberration. I've never seen that before. And I can tell it's kind of odd because Lightroom actually doesn't recognize it as an aberration, and therefore it won't correct for it. So it's kind of weird. But again, this is an issue when you're up close looking at it here. When you're looking at it back at a normal distance, you can't really tell. Well, I say you can't really tell. You can kind of tell if you know it's there. But in general, like I said, this camera takes some pretty fantastic photos. I've been very impressed with it. So the one more issue I would call out is I am a little bit disappointed in the lens selection for this camera. So this is like I've mentioned a couple times, this is the kit lens that came with it. Looking through their actual available lenses, there are some off-brand companies that have made some. I think Rokinon's one of them, has done a lens line of prime lenses. I have an issue with prime lenses for this camera, and here's why. Is because when you go to change the lenses, let's see if I can get it to focus here, there is no dust protection for the sensor. When you're actually looking inside, that is bare sensor you're seeing. So that is not good. Especially kind of like we were doing over here, taking a beach photo shoot. I cannot change lenses at a beach because of the sand. There's no sand protection, there's no dust protection. I don't know why any camera manufacturer would do this. To the best of my knowledge, this has been kind of a consistent issue in the mirrorless line. I think Canon has a shutter curtain that goes down over the sensor when you remove the lens. But in general, this has kind of been an issue, I think, from what I've heard, in the mirrorless line. And that's kind of a big issue. Like, I don't know why that hasn't been fixed yet. Anybody that does this consistently knows that you don't want to be limited to one lens, especially on set, on a shoot. If there's any kind of wind, if there's any sand, if there's any particulate in the air, you're pretty much kind of gonna be screwed. Limited to one lens, right? That's a problem. I could deal with that if I had a better selection of lenses that weren't, maybe not just kit lenses, maybe better selection. Other than that, that is basically my take on the photographic side. I've been very impressed with it. There's a couple of little issues there, but things that could be can be worked around. And like I said, it's only when you get to really close, if you're blowing it up big or whatever. So in general, I've been impressed with this little camera. Now we're going to go talk about the video side of it. So as far as the video goes, one thing that I've already noticed is that I'm having a hard time connecting my microphone. So typically what I use when I'm shooting video is a Rode VideoMic Pro, which has a 3.5mm jack, right? It has the 3.5mm plug. The jack on this camera is a 2.5mm. So I got an adapter, and it won't work. I can't get it to work just right. So I tried with a different microphone. I actually tried it with my lapel mic, and it did work, but that tethers me to the camera. I can't really move around a lot when I'm using a tether mic. So I'm actually, I kind of went old school, back to my old way of doing it, where I have a lapel mic on a voice recorder, and I'll just sync them up in Premiere Pro after the fact. But today, to test the video side of it, I wanted to actually come down to Concours d'Elegance. It's Amelia Island has it every year, and it's a ginormous car show. I think they said there's somewhere around like 460 cars here, and it's everything from old school race cars. I've seen some from the 1909 as one of the race cars, or as a replica, of course. But I've already seen a McLaren, Maserati, Rolls Royce, like all kinds of just beautiful cars from all eras. And I figured I'd use this opportunity to test the video capability of this camera. One thing to understand, though, is at an event like this, in an event that's this huge, for every car, there's a crowd of people around it. So shooting video gets a little bit difficult, especially if I'm trying to get it to where there's not just a lot of people in there. I'm trying to actually get the cars without the crowd. So, but bear with me, and let's see how well this goes. you.